Writing session. Friends, today we will be discussing the question that was posted on our portal on 11th of December. So friends, on 11th of December, we had asked you a question regarding GM crops. The question read like this: the use of biotechnology to grow transgenic crops is a way ahead to feed the rapidly growing population in poor countries. In this context, explain advantages and disadvantages of GM crops. So you had to mention here all the advantages and disadvantages of GM crops. First, let me revise you with all the 5 bullet guidelines that we ask you to follow in every other video. Friends, you have to dissect properly. You have to localize. It means from a macro view to micro specific, you have to bring specific context. Then you have to build up the scenario and add value. Here, adding value will include all case studies, examples, facts, statistics, graph, all sorts of additional things that you can do to make your answer look more presentable and attractive to read. And finally, conclusion. Conclusion has to be a way forward and on a constructive note. So it has to be either way forward or on a constructive note, looking at an optimistic angle of the question. So friends, just for a sample answer of this question, we are posting this video to you. Please make sure that you, instead of looking at the content of what we have written, you try to strategize regarding the way we have proceeded with the answer. Here, as you can see, we have started with the growing global population, and the growth is projected to come from poor countries like Asia and Africa. So because this population is burgeoning at a high pace, it is imperative that we have to ensure the food production is optimum to meet the requirement. In this regard, transgenic crops are useful for us. So here we have to introduce where you say that in these crops, DNA is manipulated by using biotechnology and their properties are altered. To mention specifically, the genes from bacteria or virus are taken and they are inserted into the crop genes. So it makes them resistant to lots of diseases, and in that way its productivity and yield and other things also enhances. So friends, here in the introduction you have to introduce in a localized phenomena. As you can see, we have used that phenomena. We proceeded from global population and the requirement for food for a massive population, and then later we came towards transgenic crops and introduced what are transgenic crops. Further down the line, here you have to mention about the advantages and disadvantages of GM crops. You can cite major 2 to 3 advantages and make sure that you add value to your question by citing some examples for each of these subheadings. So here we have mentioned 3 subheadings like higher productivity, higher shelf life, and GM crops use less water. So for each of these, we have mentioned some examples. Here you can see in this higher shelf life, you can see flavor saver gene, and about lesser water, we have mentioned that corn and cotton has reduced 53% and 75% respectively. They have reduced their water usage. And then the disadvantages of GM crops. Here again 3 subheadings like expensive, health of the people, and genetic diversity. In this, you have to cite some cases or any report findings that you come across while searching answer for this question. So friends, and finally proceed forward with the conclusion. Here your conclusion has to be optimistic, and you don't have to be critical regarding any of the stance that you have taken in question. So you should not be radical towards any one view and say that only either GM crops should be allowed or they should not be allowed at all. Instead of that, your answer has to be rational, has to be balanced, and take into account the various views that are being posed off. So here, as you can see, here we have said that we have the GM crops on hold, lack of scientific evidence of their effects on health and environment. Okay, Supreme Court has put on hold, this thing other than BT cotton because of lack of scientific evidence that we have about their effects on health and environment. So only BT cotton is right now permitted, and other things like GM mustard or other sorts of varieties, they are not permitted, because they have a fear that some cases like where super pest, this is just for your additional information, say like super pest or super weeds can come up in the environment, which will be resistant to all other types of weedicides or pesticides that we already have. So in that case, it will be very difficult to manage such new forms of mutations. Additionally, there is a fear that eating GM crops and other things can produce allergic reactions, severe allergic reactions to humans, which will be very difficult to control. So there are lots of ecological, environmental and other parameters on which Supreme Court is yet to decide, and they will give a very balanced decision on that later. But for the time being, for a conclusion, you have to make sure that you give a balanced view and a way forward. So friends, that's all for today. Keep writing answers in our portal and make sure that you finish each question within the stipulated time. That's all for today. We'll meet another time. Till then, goodbye.